Video game graphics and hardware seem to get better every single year. However, some games truly stand out among the crowd thanks to incredible artwork and cutting-edge technology. Today, I want to take a look at what I consider to be the best looking video games that you can play right now, starting with one that I've sunk hundreds of hours into, Battlefield 5. Despite releasing almost 5 years ago, Battlefield 5's incredible environmental detail, RTX reflections, and beautiful locations make it stand out as one of the best looking multiplayer shooters around. Teaming up with Nvidia, DICE pushed this game to the limit of what's possible in a multiplayer shooter, and arguably what wasn't possible, as when this game came out with ray tracing enabled, it chugged on even the best hardware. However, thanks to some major optimizations and faster video cards, the game is now very playable with maxed out settings, and it's simply breathtaking. From the golden fields of Arras to the city of Rotterdam, the rubble of devastation, the snowy port of Narvik, and the tropical islands in the Pacific maps, Battlefield 5 shows DICE's artistry and competence when being challenged with different environments. And not only do all of these environments look stunning, but they also behave realistically, with destruction, footprints in the mud and snow, and things catching on fire realistically. Combine that with some solid gameplay and amazing sounds to back it up, and it's really no mystery why this game still has such an active player base many years later. Now, sometimes the best visuals are seen from a bird's eye view, and Microsoft Flight Simulator delivers these views with unparalleled realism. This game has become the benchmark that all flight sims will be judged against for years to come regarding their visual presentation and the fact that it simulates an entire planet with graphics and detail that have only been getting better after each year. A couple years ago, I flew into the outer stretches of Hurricane Laura, which was based on the real-life weather conditions, and it was one of the most jaw-dropping experiences I've had in a game. The realistic day-night simulator and calendar lets you go back in time to visit eclipses, hurricanes. You can punch in your hometown address to see your neighborhood flying from above, or visit famous locations with near photorealistic views. Now, of course, the game looks great provided that you don't get too close. The team did simulate the entire world, so they didn't exactly have time to go in and fine-tune every single city block. However, over the years, that's kind of what they've been doing, with each DLC adding more detail and high-fidelity areas from around the world. Not only did Microsoft Flight Simulator break the visual barrier when it launched, but it seems like it'll be able to upgrade and maintain its incredible presentation for years to come. Now, sometimes the pursuit of insane fidelity comes at the cost of other progress. No game exemplifies that more than Star Citizen. This game has been in alpha for over 10 years with no sign of a full release on the horizon. Many would argue that the developer's insatiable appetite for building everything to just an insane degree of detail is also the project's undoing. Fully simulated planets with massive cities, atmospheric systems, asteroid belts, and huge, intricately detailed spaceships. However, to the developer's credit, the visuals have become really the core appeal of the game. Sometimes I just sit back and soak in the landscape because it's so unbelievably breathtaking. Had the developers cut corners or sacrificed their ambition to ship the game sooner, I think they would have also lost their core audience of gamers willing to pay just about anything to see an uncompromised vision of the everything sim. Star Citizen could have just been another space sim, but their goal is to be the space sim, and while the game is very far from a final product all these years later, the visuals and scale are more impressive than anything else out there. What about an insanely ambitious game that's actually finished? Well, Red Dead Redemption 2 has a penny for your thoughts. This might be Rockstar's most impressive showcase of their technical expertise, which is saying something. If you've ever been to the US heartland, you know how well they nailed that part of the country's looks, sounds, and feel. Just like how Fallout New Vegas made its virtual Nevada wasteland feel like the real deserts, Red Dead Redemption 2 takes players on a virtual tour of 1899 American frontier. But unlike New Vegas, it's a photorealistic tour that doesn't rely on suspending your disbelief to soak in the scenery. Red Dead Redemption 2's landscape is a handcrafted masterpiece that takes the most idyllic aspects of every hour of the day and crams them into an awesome day-night cycle. The sun rises and sets realistically, the stars shine bright at night, the moon makes those nights bright and alive. Fog rolls in during the wee hours of the morning. There's never a dull moment visually in Red Dead Redemption 2, and it's amazing how natural it looks. And of course, these amazing visuals come on top of the insane amount of interaction and detail that Rockstar has crammed into every aspect of the game. Everything has a properly scripted and performed animation. There's no cheap waving your hands over an animal carcass to skin it. You actually skin it. And it's those little touches that made it one of the most expensive games ever developed to hit store shelves, and it'll likely be the thing that keeps attracting new players for generations to come. Now, what if you want a game that looks realistic but looks like a realistic version of a nightmarish future? Few developers have rendered a post-apocalyptic wasteland as well as 4A Games does with the Metro franchise. And Metro Exodus was their first game to feature ray tracing, and the end result is one of the most immersive games ever made. At launch, the game looked fantastic and did have some ray tracing features, but they were a mix of traditional rendering and early ray tracing effects. However, in 2021, the developers released the Enhanced Edition that featured ray trace global illumination, emissive lights, and reflections. The result was basically the first AAA game to be more or less fully ray traced. There's pretty much no traditionally rendered lights in this version of the game, and while it isn't full path tracing, which is a much more accurate form of ray tracing, it's about as close as anyone was able to get in 2021. The interiors of buildings in particular go from looking like they could be any sort of high fidelity game to a realistic snapshot of a real-world setting. And while ray tracing has become even more impressive on a technical level since this, Exodus is still an incredibly impressive example, even compared to modern games. And speaking of modern game tech, I'm sure many of you are just waiting until I mentioned Cyberpunk 2077. And much like Crysis in the early 2000s, Cyberpunk is a technical showcase of what's possible with modern graphical tools. Fully path-trace lighting, DLSS frame generation, insane fidelity in an urban open-world environment. Cyberpunk 2077 is a checklist of the most insane game engine tech out today. It even offers extensive modding support. It could easily be argued that Cyberpunk is the best graphics that any video game has ever achieved, and even that is a disservice to the overall package. Because Cyberpunk is much more than just a pretty looking game. It's become one of the best single-player experiences available today. Now, we've already seen what the Frostbite engine can do in a World War II setting with Battlefield 5, but what if somebody applied that same engine and artistry to a Star Wars universe? DICE made arguably the most faithful looking and sounding Star Wars game ever with Battlefront 2. When DICE decided to reboot the Battlefront franchise, they went and actually photogrammetry scanned as many of the original Star Wars film assets as they could and put them directly into the game. This goes above and beyond any other Star Wars game project I've ever seen, and it really shows. You can see the authentic visuals in perfect fidelity better than you could in, honestly, the original movies, and it's incredible. Playing Battlefront 2 feels like you're in a Star Wars movie, truly, and that everything you see and hear is an original, authentic experience, and I haven't felt that way from any other Star Wars game. DICE managed to capture the magic of Star Wars with Battlefront 2 and did it with graphics so well designed that even today, many years later, they stand out alongside the greats. Now, the next game is problematic to show on YouTube because showing what makes it so incredible just doesn't come across in the video format because it's a VR title. But if you ever wondered what one of the best looking VR games was, Half-Life Alyx is the benchmark to beat. Valve used this game to showcase what's possible in VR, and it's a pretty staggering accomplishment, especially when compared to many other VR games. One of its crazy accomplishments that still leaves my jaw on the floor today is the NPC animations. Most of the human characters in the game had their animations based on motion capture work, plus tons of hand animation and intelligent blending to present some of the most realistically moving people you'll see in any video game. In VR, those over there look like real people. Even up close, the facial animations look convincing and human. Most 2D games struggle to achieve this level of fidelity, and Valve being able to pull it off in VR is an accomplishment to say the least. Every frame of a VR game has to be rendered twice, and at a minimum of 90 FPS to feel truly immersed without making players like throw up from motion sickness. That means all the graphics and animations have to be incredibly well optimized to look as good as they possibly can and also run as fast as they possibly can, giving VR a much bigger challenge than traditional games. And despite all of these tech hurdles, Half-Life Alyx still looks incredible. Again, it's more of a you have to have been there type experience, but it is well worth it if you haven't tried it. Now, of course, there's a ton of incredible looking games that I didn't cover here in detail. Ready or Not, Insomniac's Spider-Man, Ghosts of Tsushima, and Horizon games are all stunning and represent very different genres. Ready or Not uses its photoreal visuals to immerse you in a tactical simulation of hunting down the worst of society. Spider-Man is, well, I mean, just look at it. It's a stunning recreation of New York City with the best web slinging ever done in a video game. Ghost of Tsushima does landscapes like it's nobody's business, and if it does actually get ported to PC, I would assume it'll bring even more graphical fidelity. And the Horizon games are great at delivering vibrant and gorgeous fantasy settings. The real-time cutscenes in this game feature some of the most incredibly well-done character lighting ever. Now, if this video illustrates anything, it's that even older games from say 6 years back can stand alongside the best of what's out today. When devs have the time and budget to go the extra mile, it pays off, like with Battlefront 2 and Red Dead Redemption 2. Artistry and dev talent play a huge role alongside engine tech and optimization. What do you guys think of my list, and would you change it? Let me know in the comments, and next up, check out this video ranking every single Battlefield game ever made. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time. This is Level Cap, signing off.